received the Distinguished Service Cross, the Silver Star with cluster, the Distinguished Flying Cross with cluster, 2 Purple Hearts, 11 Air Medals, the British Flying Cross, and the French Croix de Guerre. When my first tour ended, I was assigned to be an assistant operations officer. And as an assistant operations officer, I would fly as a command pilot. I didn't have my own crew. The command pilot would sit on the right seat of a lead crew. The lead crew pilot would actually fly the plane. The command pilot was in charge of his group, making sure that they assembled properly, making sure that they joined with other groups properly, making sure that they joined with the fighters, and if they came to a target that they couldn't bomb because of cloud cover or other conditions, they would have to make a decision whether to go on to another target or return. It was that kind of a responsibility. And also I was put in charge, along with Harry Crosby, the group navigator, of training lead crews, which I enjoyed very much. We ultimately ended up by having a superb group of lead crews. The 100th Bomb Group, when I first joined it, was not a well-disciplined group, unfortunately. Their formation flying was loose. We had a commanding officer who was probably the nicest person you'd ever meet. He couldn't do enough for you. He was courageous and just a wonderful person. But he didn't enforce any rules, and people took advantage of him. The people who served under him took advantage and didn't perform properly, I think. And it was not until a commanding officer named Tom Jeffrey came to the field, sometime I think in April of 1944, did we become a superb group. I think the best group in the Air Force. He was a brilliant commander, charismatic and intelligent, and he just brought the group together. As an example of what his judgment was, we were one of the few groups that dropped supplies to the Maquis, the French Maquis, the French resistant forces. We would drop them supplies of munitions, and they would be dropped in parachutes, white parachutes. And we were assigned to that mission one time, and Jeffrey was leading it. And we peeled off from the stream of bombers who were headed toward a target with real bombs. And as our group peeled off, a plane from another group joined us. There was a rule that if you couldn't stay with your own group, join another group for your protection and drop bombs with them. Well, that plane had bombs in it, and that plane was on a different frequency than our group, so we couldn't contact them. And Jeffrey had the problem of going and dropping our parachutes with the supplies in it, and having that bomber come along, opening his bomb bay doors and dropping bombs, and there would have been an international incident where we would have destroyed the people we were trying to help. But he sent one plane over. He circled the group and sent one of our planes open with the bomb bay doors open, and they dropped the parachutes with the supplies in it. And that bomber, the pilot who had the bombs on plane, saw that, closed his bomb bay doors, and we all uttered a sigh of relief. I thought that was rather brilliant that he did that sort of thing. And I remember flying as command pilot on a mission to Berlin with a pilot named Kincannon. He was a lead pilot. And it was a little incident that occurred, but apparently we were hit over the target and the oil drained out of one engine. And it drained out suddenly, and we couldn't feather the engine. And the engine froze. And instead of the propeller turning, the whole engine turned. And it was vibrating so much, the plane threatened to fall apart. So I dove the plane, pushing the throttles forward, and then suddenly pulled up and cut back on the throttles, and I managed to crack the I can't remember the term anymore, that the propeller was spinning on. And it was rotating wildly and causing a drag on the plane. So I once again went through the same maneuver, pulled up again, and this time the propeller shot out and cut the propeller next to it. We had to feather that. And we got back fine. We landed at another airfield, and I recall it was a long flight. It took a long time, and it took a lot out of us. We landed, we ran out of fuel. 3 engines had no fuel, and we were near the field, and the 4th sputtered out. Well, we were only on 2 engines. The 3rd sputtered out, and then as we landed, the 4th sputtered out. We landed, and they had to drag the plane off the runway. And I was lying under the wing, thoroughly exhausted, didn't want to talk to anybody. And the commanding officer of that field came out, looked at me, looked at the plane. He said, "We're not going to lose this war." And I remember D-Day. On D-Day, our group, like others, flew 3 missions, early in the morning, afternoon, and at dusk. I led the mission at dusk. And as we flew over the channel, we looked down and saw thousands of ships in an armada down there. It was so thrilling. And one of the crew, we had discipline. You're not allowed to talk on the intercom unless it was very important. But one of the crew started to pray, and we all joined in. And after D-Day, I flew on a mission as command pilot. I became squadron commander of the 350 Squadron. And as command pilot, we led a mission to Nuremberg. And over Nuremberg, a plane was hit. We ultimately lost 3 engines and couldn't return to our base. And we were over France, and we crash landed in France. And unfortunately, there was a tree and a bank, a little canal bank there. And we hit the bank, and the plane toppled over, and all 4 officers were hurt seriously. None of the enlisted men were hurt. And I passed out. I thought I heard some French voices. And the next thing I knew, I was in a hospital in Oxford, England, and where I remained for 5 weeks. I had very serious head injuries and face injuries. My mouth was cut up. I broke my right arm. My leg had been gashed in several places. And, I forgot to tell you, before that mission, Jeffrey was down at the flight line. I came down to the flight line without a